faith and business.
All right, guys, good morning and welcome back to another episode here of Faith and Business. My name is Dominic DeFranco, and this is my passion brought to you guys, some of my two favorite things, business and faith, and how to incorporate the two, and just kind of some experiences from my own life and my own faith journey. Just got to make a disclaimer here. Listen, I'm not your guru. I don't think I'm mightier than any single person who might be listening this or decides to turn it off at this point. I'm in the trenches with you in life, and I'm the kind of person that thinks we can all achieve a greater sense of fulfillment in life, and I want to be a part of the movement that helps bring people to that. Make people feel like somebody's above them or less than them or this or that. It's all about just bringing each other together in community to Christ, where I believe there is greater peace in life. So if you grab your morning coffee here, got your coffee with us, you got your Bible, hopefully you got your journal with you as well. I'm going to give you a second to get set up here. We'll put up the chapter that we are going to be working on today. We are in Romans 8. So I'll give you a moment to flip open your Bible here. And I'm going to go over Romans 8:8 specifically. It's my favorite verse, probably my favorite verse that's in the Bible. A lot of you may know this one already. But I'm going to go over this, and then I want to go over a little bit of what's before it and what God is kind of calling us to here, right? And maybe something that we can take from this to consider today. Okay, so you'll see that up on the screen as well. And we'll jump into Romans 8:8 here, right? And it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose." And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. It's a powerful verse. If you see that on the screen, you have that in front of you. Take a moment, kind of reflect on that, think on that. What does that mean to you? Maybe in this moment we could pray together to just have discernment and wisdom, which is more profitable than any gem or any jewel we can try to store up in this life or any car we can get. May we have the wisdom and discernment to understand in our hearts what it is maybe the Lord is trying to teach us today and what he's trying to talk to us about and how we might be able to incorporate that directly into our lives. Here's my perspective on this and something just to consider for your own self as you move forward in your day. Now, I love that verse, and I'm going to talk about why, but I want to actually bring it back to the beginning of chapter 8, where God is talking a lot here, right? This is Paul in Romans, talking to the Romans. He's talking a lot about how, like, the spirit versus the flesh, right? The spirit meaning going towards things that lift our soul up, that are good energy for our soul, good foods, good music, good friendship, good cheer, good conversation, prayer, meditation, taking care of ourselves, developing. Or going towards the flesh, greed, lust, porn, overconsumption of alcohol, drugs, getting things in life, thinking that you're higher than yourself in life, thinking that power and that status is what the thing that you should be going after things of the flesh, of the human carnal body. And it says here in Romans 8 in the beginning, he's talking about those that give way to the flesh. Those are the carnal minded. Those are the people who are wrapped up in their own fleshy mind. And that is leading towards death, ultimately. Spiritual death, right? Spiritual death where you're separated from God and that connection to your source of life. But giving way to the spirit part of us, gives life to the body. It brings us peace in life. I believe obviously this chapter is saying this, but in my own prayer life and just in my own development, just also observing people who I look up to and wish to emulate in faith, as fathers, as business people, as men of service and faith. I see these people as being people who are constantly going towards the spirit, right? And they're doing away with the flesh, making sure that they are giving life to peace and life to integrity and life to good character and good cheer, right? And why I wanted to point this out is because before we make it to Romans chapter 8 verse 28, Romans 8:8, where it says, "And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God." What does it mean to love God? Well, I would assume it probably does not mean that we're fleshy minded or in our carnal mind. We're probably giving way to service, giving way towards enlightenment, giving way towards bettering ourselves to be a better person for society, for the people around us, to raise better children, to be a better example in our marriage, to be a better example in business and to use our business as the way to drive forward the service and discipleship that God calls us to. So I think that Romans 8:28, if you read that without first reading verses 1 and before then, where it's talking about the flesh and spirit, you're going to miss the part where it says, to those who love God, all things work together for good. Now, to the person who's just being completely led astray and they're going on their own demise, right? We've been there. You think you can do it on your own. You're caught up with bad friends who keep leading you towards destructive things. You're caught up in the wrong groups of people, sitting at bars with people who just gossip and talk about dumb stuff and never anything that's uplifting or helping better anybody or talking about advancing kinds of conversation or about God and freedom and letting go of your burdens. Right? You're putting yourself in the environment where you're going towards the flesh. I don't believe then you can say that all things work together for you in your life. I think you might be able to say that, but it goes towards the negative, and how if you continue to align yourself in those negative habits and those negative scenarios and those negative people and those negative environments, all things according to what comes to you in life, from what you put out and what's coming back to you because you decide to move away from the spirit and go towards more the flesh, that is what leads to spiritual death. And all things do work together for you in that regard. Maybe not necessarily for the good, but for exactly what it is you're putting out. Right? But if we're going towards the spirit, we have that connection with God. We feel that relationship with God. It's something that we focus on, and we focus on dying to every day to raise ourselves up in Him, to allow Him the opportunity to work through us and to work in us and through our hearts. Right? I believe then, yes, we can confidently use this word. Right? We can confidently use this word as a weapon, as the armor of God to stand up against the evil adversary. So when we're going through these various things, we can say, of course, I believe that all things work together for good for those who love God. Who loves God? Somebody that's going towards the Spirit. Does that mean your life is always easy? Does that mean your life is always happy? No. It in fact says all the time in Scripture that you will encounter trials, but it's a good thing when you encounter trials. Coming to God is, look at Jesus. Jesus had to walk. He had to walk the hill all the way up, right? To be crucified in front of people, in front of his own mother, in front of his disciples, in front of his group, right? Imagine that. So a relationship with God is not always easy. Matter of fact, nothing says that it is going to be easy, but it's worth it because then you can lean into these things and start to feel it for yourself and realize, man, if I do continue to lean into the Spirit, and even as I go through and I don't necessarily feel God always working with me, I don't always feel it. Maybe I kind of feel like I'm in the desert. But if you keep affirming and you keep persisting in faith, I promise you, you can get to the point where you feel like truly all things are working together for you in your life. Okay? And all things work together for a greater purpose, right? They always say hindsight vision's 2020. Now I want to end this one today by just giving you a little bit of an example of how I had taken Romans 8:28 and allowed that to be something that I look back on my life and realized, holy smokes, it really does. And this is an important part, right? An important part of this is realizing that we have to come to the table with God, sit in silence, and allow Him the opportunity to speak to us. We have to give God the opportunity to speak into our hearts. It's not quiet when you're sitting on the can and you're scrolling Instagram. It's not quiet with a cup of coffee and you got your kids right. You need to get up and give your men. Get up early. Get up before your family. Go pray for your family in silence like Jesus did for His disciples and before He was crucified and handed over to Pontius Pilate. He was in the garden weeping and His disciples were sleeping. Get yourselves up early. Go to God. Go to your knees. Pray to God. Humble yourself before God and go to Him before the day for your family. Right? But I want to talk to you about how this has been something where, because I've taken that time and I've allowed myself to become disciplined in that regard, to where I give God time, I give Him that silence to speak in my heart, I can see the wisdom He's deposited into my spirit and how things have really worked for good in hindsight vision 2020. I'm going to start back in 2019 when I decided to work for a mortgage company local in Cleveland, Ohio. I had just graduated college in December of 18. I got my mortgage license. I started working for this company, in Cleveland, about 20 minutes away from where it is I was working at the time. And I worked there for about 3 years, for about 2.5 years, 3 years. Yeah, from 2019 to 2022, I left in the beginning of 2022. So I started in the beginning of 2019. I left in the beginning of 2022. Now, looking back on a bunch of individual events that happened in life from that time until now, if I got caught up in that, that would be fleshy minded. carnal minded, thinking that those things were the individual things that were working against me and that the universe was not serving me, but in fact it was harming me, because there was a lot of crazy things that happened in that time period. But because I've been able to look back with wisdom and with discernment and with the sight of God, with the eyes of God, to be able to see that, and that's something you have to pray for and ask for. I'm not saying that from a place of arrogance. I'm saying that from a place of humility, where all of us can have that if we go towards this relationship. And if you're in that relationship and deep in it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But you start to see these individual events and think, man, why is the universe working against me? Or you turn it around and you start to think, how is this serving me? Or maybe all things do work together for good. So I started working at this mortgage company in 2019. Before I left in 2022, that's where I met my now wife, Nina Marie. She started working there. Actually, when I was sick because of COVID, when that was going rampant towards the end of 2020, she started working there. When I came back, she was the person that lit up the office for me. And then the rest is history. And here we are now with 2 kids. I don't work at that company anymore. She doesn't work at that company anymore. I have nothing to do with that place anymore. But that I was brought there for a reason. And even though it was painful leaving, I still was brought there and can look back and say, man, had I not gone there, I would have never met Nina. I would have, maybe I never would have. Maybe there would have been some other plan or some other person or some, you don't know, but things work together for a specific reason. And I'm darn happy about it. And I look back on it with such gratitude. Who else did I meet when I was there? I met an individual who became a very important factor in my life, a gentleman named Matt. A couple years later, I ended up having an introduction from Matt to an individual inside of the insurance space that I am now very close to, and who I work very closely with, who is one of my uplines in this space. I would have never met this individual had I not worked at the mortgage company, had I not met that individual who became an important factor in my life, an important mentor and close friend. And I would have never then met Josh, who now I work with at Unitrust Financial Group, right? It never would have happened. Maybe it would have, but under different circumstances. So we could see how these things align. Right? Another thing too, before I came to Unitrust, I had my car stolen from me at gunpoint. I was stopping off one day when I was doing errands to get gas in not the best of area. I had my car stolen from me. And this was one of those opportunities. Literally, when I was putting the gas pump back in after it was done, I had an individual run up and literally flash a gun at me. I tried to get the car. He flashed a gun at me. He got in the car and he took off, right? And I have it all on video. I could probably post a little clip in here. But looking back on that, I could think that all these events, leaving that company, all the things that happened there with family, all the things that happened, the ups and downs in that time there, meeting Nina, right? Meeting this individual, Matt, meeting Josh, then going to work with Josh, then separating, right? I didn't talk to him for like a year and a half, almost 2 years. And then all of a sudden my car gets stolen and all this stuff starts to come full circle. Now, 2 years later after that happens, I'm back with Josh, who I was introduced to 3 years ago, almost 4 years ago, right? 2022. I'm married and have 2 kids with Nina and a beautiful growing family and a happy relationship. And now this individual, Matt, is actually coming back around full circle, and who he introduced me to in the business. Matt's now actually coming to work in my agency, and we're going to build this thing together. So I look back at all these things and I think, okay, had I not gone to Liberty, I wouldn't have met Nina. Then I wouldn't have met Matt. I wouldn't have met then Josh. I would have never had my car stolen, which then, if my car wasn't stolen, would I have ended back up with Josh here at Unitrust and Ron, and then built a relationship with them and a friendship and a brotherhood, and now something where we're building something special in business, and with all the other people, the great people we have here. So I know this one's a little bit longer today, but I look back over those things in my life and I don't think, oh gosh, I had my car stolen from me. I had to separate from that specific job and that company. I didn't talk to these people for a few years, but when it came back around full circle, and with the sight of God and wisdom that I prayed for, I can look back over all these events and think all things really did work together for my good. But in that, I also know where it says, for those who love God, I know in those times, even when I was being tried, I was persisting in my faith. I was persisting in ensuring that I was being obedient to God. Was I always? No. Did I fall short? Often, and I still do. But I made sure that I persisted in my faith. And I remember specifically being inside of the gas station after my car had gotten stolen from me at gunpoint. And I went inside and there was bulletproof glass everywhere and like a cage over where you could order food, all this stuff, right? Bars. And the guy had to hand me his phone because my phone was in the car. And he handed me through the thing. And I remember calling Nina multiple times because she didn't know the number. She don't pick up. She don't know it. So I called. I texted. Nina, it's Dominic. Pick up. Get on the phone with her. I'm waiting for the police to show up. I'm waiting for my father-in-law to show up to come get me, right? And I remember pacing that store saying, only good can come from this. Only good can come from this. Only good can come from this. And here's the thing I want to end with you guys here today. When you are reading this word and you're allowing it to become active in your spirit, you have to translate it into the physical. You have to manifest it into something physical and speak these things out loud. I don't think on that day, my life would have changed to where then I was brought back with Josh the very next day, came to Unitrust, and then my life changed financially and changed so many other things for me to be able to produce for my family and help them, have another kid, buy a beautiful home, all these things, right? Live graciously, give more time to my spirit, all that stuff, right? I don't think it would have happened had I sank into the sourness of the situation of what happened that day. If I would have been poo-poo, if I would have been, all upset and like, oh man, the universe is against me, right? The universe is against me. Why is this happening to me? No. I literally remember sitting in there saying, it's like my higher self took over and I was literally being spoken through to my heart. And I remember literally feeling so confidently like, Dominic, this is your chance to enact the faith that you've been praying on and the muscle of faith that you've been building for years. Only good can come from this. Affirm it, know it, believe it. And I remember going through that with a smile. I made maybe $1,200 that month. I was dwindling cash in my savings account that I had earned up when I was in the mortgage business. And I was in a tough position financially. I had a kid at home, a mortgage to pay. And at the time, I was literally Ubering just to make money to get by. Not that that's a bad thing to anybody who's doing that. I respect the hustle and respect what you're doing, but that's just where I was at, right? I went from making a lot of money in the mortgage business to landscaping, thinking I want to be an EMT, and then I was Ubering at one point, right? So a lot of things going through my head and my spirit at that time for me to feel discouraged. But I allowed that to be a time where I enacted my faith and allowed my faith to be something that came out and I used. No different than if you build your muscle up, right? You got to go pick something up. That's your time to use it, right? You got to go pick something up heavy or whatever. That's your time to use the muscles you've been training. Well, I've been training my faith muscle constantly. And this was that time. The robbing at gunpoint of my car was the time that I could finally enact my faith and allow myself the opportunity to really show God my obedience towards him and also my faith. And that's why I paced that store until the cops showed up and my father-in-law showed up and picked me up that day and brought me home to my family. And that's why I kept pacing, saying, only good will come from this. Only good will come from this. All things work together for good. So I hope this message was something that you could resonate with. I hope you got something from this. I hope you can see clearly how Romans 8:28 might make a big impact in your life, but not necessarily just Romans 8:28. But if you go back to the beginning of Romans and ask yourself, where am I at? Am I giving light to the flesh? Am I giving light to the spirit? And in every decision I make, you're going towards one or the other. And what is it that I want to go towards? And what do I really want? And if I'm aligned with that, I go towards that. Let me enact this faith and feel this and know this in my spirit and give it out to others. I hope you guys enjoy your day. I hope this message finds you well. And I look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of Faith in Business.